when it comes to SC retics, this is chess, not checkers.
What's up, Coil Crew? This week we are interviewing Eric Lee, aka the Snow King, out of California. Really excited, Eric. Obviously, it's been a pleasure getting to know you a little bit and just the things you're working on and some of those other different things there. But you were just talking to me a little bit about planning in terms of new breeders or getting and marketing yourself. Talk a little bit about that. How big of an effect does that have in terms of selling those babies when they come around?
I think the biggest thing is basically breeding the snakes. Once you get the mechanics of it, it's pretty easy, but making sure your name, your brand is out there, because at the end of the day, you are selling the snakes, the genetics and all that, but you're selling yourself. If the people don't know you, they can go to probably a few other sources for the exact same animal, same genetics, and spend money with them because they recognize them, they're familiar, they're on all the groups, YouTube or whatever. So you got to spend the time, and a lot of people like watching other people's videos or pics as they raise their animals up and their pets first and breeders second. Whereas someone that just comes out, throws a bunch of money down, hey, I bred it. Oh, I don't know you. You're not in the groups and the community. It's like, where's the long-term commitment to not only your animals but to your customers? So I think the biggest thing is, the animals obviously have to be rock solid and the quality that is there, but you got to market yourself and let your future customers know, your current customers, like, hey, if you have issues, I'm here. I'm in it for the long haul, not just, bang one out and get out of the industry.
In it for a quick buck.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? And I think it's interesting because this isn't a get-rich-quick scheme.
Yeah,
right?
not at all.
It's a long-term play. Typically you're buying hatchlings, so females are taking 4, 5, 6 years, right, to get up to size. And a lot of people, what I'm currently seeing in the space is they're buying all these animals, buying all these investment animals, but they're doing absolutely nothing to get their name out there.
Yeah, exactly.
And unfortunately, in the world we live in, marketing is kind of everything, and especially in the reptile industry, your name and reputation is everything.
Yeah, everything about breeding is a multi-step plan. Like I always tell people, I was like, when it comes to SC retics, this is chess, not checkers. Everything's a progression and steps. One helps the other and it progresses it. If you're missing a step, you're missing a key component for your success down the road long term.
Right. And so right now you're obviously focused on bringing some of those codoms into the snow projects.
Yep.
You got a lot of double het stuff. And then you're also working on the ocelot/rainbow, whatever you want to call it, gene, and bringing that into Super Dwarf. So maybe talk a little bit about the plans for the rainbow, or just kind of your strategy a little bit behind that.
Basically, the rainbow I got is a posset Indo, so the first breeding I plan on doing with him hopefully this season, I'm going to be running him to a 62.5% Kalatoa Purple GC Snow. The main reason for that, besides making the triple hits, I need to prove him out. If he proves out, great. If he doesn't, that's fine too. That'll change my direction on which way I take it in the future. Because he's going to be run to pure STs for sure in the future, but he might also be run to other morphs depending on if he proves out het Indo or not.
Right.
So basically, all on those animals, I'm going to be holding back pretty much everything. I might let a couple females go, because at the end of the day, if I sell a female, it doesn't affect me, because you're going to end up buying that female, raise it up for 4 or 5 years. Whereas if I sold you a male, if you already have other het, rainbow, ocelot stuff, whatever, you're going to crank that male up as fast as humanly possible, try to breed them in a year, 18 months or whatever, then that potentially could affect me in terms of long-term, project. So
other people can beat you essentially to your own project.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And we kind of see that. I guess outside the rainbow project, what other recessive genes would you like to see in Super Dwarf, and in the near future?
Right now, I have 2 other projects that I'm basically starting. I just got the males. They're both mainlands. I got a purple OGS Sun Tiger male from Shane Costello at SC Constrictors. I'll be running to Pures. Then I got a Mocha GCT male from Ryan Sullivan to start Mocha Snows in the future. Because I've had a Mochino Posset Anri girl that I've bred 5 years in a row, nothing.
Absolutely nothing.
She likes to practice, but no eggs. So I haven't gotten anything from her. And I figure, what? I've already eaten 5 years of, she's an adult. She's 8.5 years old.
Right.
So nothing. So I was like, I'm going to get the Mocha and start from the ground floor and work it that way.
Right. And I know it's really cool because obviously you're really involved in the community. You post a lot. You have some outstanding, just crazy, amazing animals. But I think in terms of just, your willingness to work with other breeders? Because I know you've done a lot of partnerships. Maybe talk a little bit about your partnerships or some of those, partner breedings you've done, because that's been pretty cool.
I think the biggest thing right now at the community is still pretty small. So if we can get it where we have, trustworthy and quality other breeders that you're promoting. Like I send people to Garrett all the time, to Lucas, to Andrew. Like for stuff I don't have, they ask me, do you have this? Nope. Check Garrett, check Andrew, check the people. It's basically we're vetting each other.
Right.
You have some new person coming in that they've seen a whatever morph. Oh, it's cool. Okay, how do I know he's legitimate? When you have other breeders saying, hey, you guys are good, they're good. And like, oh, I've worked with them, I've done breeding loans. That lends a lot of credibility to other breeders, and it just helps everyone. Because at the end of the day, there's other reptile niches where everyone's cutthroat, talk down on other people. That doesn't benefit everyone. It makes you look really unprofessional to begin with.
Right.
But if you're like, hey, we're all helping each other out, like that's only gonna build the community and just the market in general overall.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, just like any other business industry, you can see everybody kind of as your competition, but especially in the super dwarf space, this is kind of like the wild, wild west.
Yeah,
right.
Now.
Like there's
we're at
so
the
many,
ground floor.
We're at the ground floor, and that's why it's also so exciting for someone new like myself coming in, where it's like, I bought my animals. I'm not going to have a clutch for 2 years, but really my goal is, if you love me or hate me, you're going to know who I am.
You're going to be out there making yourself known.
Right. Yeah. And marketing myself and trying to, bring that passion and energy. And obviously there's been legends like yourself, Garrett, Richard Bilbo, all these people that have really laid the groundwork for what we have today. And that's critical. And I think it's really cool to just continue to build off of that
absolutely.
And really see.
I mean, at the end of the day, like all the guys that started it, like in the last few years, you're going to eventually pass the torch to someone.
Right.
I mean, you might stay at the top for a while, but eventually it's going to someone else.
Right.
So if you're going to pass it off, you at least try to make sure you're passing it off to the right people.
And you've obviously been in this business long. How long have you been officially?
I got my first retic in 91 or 92, I don't know.
And then you just slowly moved into Super Dwarf. So maybe talk a little bit about, because you're pretty connected with some of the top guys in the mainland market. What's happening with the mainland market? Where do you see this kind of all going? Do you see a huge transition?
Market, I see it all going towards Super Dwarf and locality stuff. Just because mainlands are cool. The only problem is after Lacey was passed and was 2015, they became extremely, disposable. Because before then, prices were so high, so there was a very niche market for the mainlands. Once Lacey went through and people dumped breeders for next to nothing, and now that, not that $200-300 is cheap, but to some people, like, I can fix that, take it to the vet for a couple grand, or I can just let it waste away or freeze it and get another one at $200 or $300.
Right.
And whereas the SC stuff, usually more expensive, so hopefully you're getting a more discerning buyer, but at the end of the day, it still comes down to, there are some stupid people with lots of money and they don't care either. So you just gotta, you do your best to ask questions, because you'll know when someone's like, oh, they're just kind of like window shopping, or this guy's legitimate and he has long-term vision of what he's doing. Because I always ask people, are you buying a pet? Are you buying investment? What is your plan? Like, is it long-term, short-term? Are you, my biggest concern now is, like, with all the retics, ST or not, like, they're way smaller than mainland, but they're still way more snake than what a lot of people should handle. They think, oh, well, it's not 18 feet. A 10-foot retic's still gonna light you up. So, and for most people, where you get a boa constrictor that's 8 feet, probably twice the weight and girth, usually more mellow. Whereas that SC is still active, probably a bit more intelligent. Like, it's still, a considerable amount of dedication that you need to do if you want to do it right.
Right.
So.
Right. Well, and once again, I think it's really, really interesting to just kind of see this market shift. I mean, we're seeing mainland cows selling for $500 at these auctions, right? And there's only been a couple Super Dwarf cows ever created, right? And so that's kind of the cool part. I think that's what's so exciting for so many people hopping into this and into the business side, is there's so many possibilities. And so if you're talking to a brand new breeder, let's say scenario, what is your advice? Let's say they only want a handful of animals tops, and they want to have an optimized business. Okay. What would your suggestion be? Where do they start? Like, what do you see in the market to where it would be somewhat consistent, and it's like, hey, these animals are going to be really solid. It's a pretty sure bet.
Basically, first thing I ask them is, what's your space? Like, besides the money consideration, is like, hey, how much room do you have in your house, apartment? Like, what's your planning for, hey, like right now you want to get into it, how much money you can drop into it? Obviously is a big consideration, but space and time. Like if you're saying, hey, Eric, I want a project of 5 animals, 7 animals of ST stuff. Like, okay, that's reasonable. You can get a ton of bang for your buck for that if you get the right animals. Big thing is always, like I tell people, if you don't know what you want, get a pure locality, like, ST female.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, no matter what morph you do, you're gonna need a pure grow to bump numbers, shrink them down, and this and that. Whereas the males, like I always tell people, say you want to drop $5,000 on the male right now, you don't have any breedable females. You're gonna wait 2, 3, 4 years. In 2, 3, 4 years, that same $5,000 snake might be $5,000, but it might be 10, 15% SD higher. It might have multiple genes, so there's no reason to get the male now.
Right. No, that's some really good advice, and I think a lot of people don't really know where to start, right?
Because there's so much variation, and people are like, oh, snows are cool. I'm like, yeah, obviously I like snows a lot. Most of my collection is snow stuff, but at the end of the day, it's like, don't chase the trends or the money, because you're going to look at this animal for the next 10, 15, 20 years. Like, I don't want to get something and be like, oh, that thing's ugly, but it makes me a lot of money, but it won't make money for 4 or 5 years. It's like, you're going to get burnt out in a couple years or months. You're going to be like, I'm over it. Like, I'm going to do something that makes me more money sooner, something that I enjoy. Like anything, especially with the animal side of anything you do, if you're not doing it for the love of the animal, you're not going to last.
Well, and I think that's a message that you seem to push quite a bit, is just enjoy the journey, right? Enjoy your animals, take care of them, feed them, right? And provide the best, situation possible for them.
At the end of the day, it's like I always tell people, look at your animals as pets first. Whenever they breed, and they should breed down the road if you're keeping them right, but if all you're focused on is, oh, they're going to breed in the future, whatever, you're losing sight of why you got them in the first place. I'm pretty sure most people that got into this, they weren't like, oh, I'm making all this money on it. No, because this animal's beautiful, it's crazy, it's intelligent. Or like back in the day when I got into the mainland stuff, it's because they're enormous. So it was like, back then I never had no recollection or thought of thinking, oh, I'm going to breed them. The coolest thing ever. But I think a lot of the problems now is like a lot of people get into this, dollar signs in their head. They didn't get into it for a love or a fascination of the animal. They're just like, yo, I can make a lot of money. I'm going to do it from a 1-bedroom in my house or a closet, whatever, where they're getting into it for the wrong reason. So you got to be careful about that.
Yeah, no, that's some really sound advice. One last question. What, if you had to pick any locality, what's your favorite locality? Because obviously you love snow stuff, but what would you say is kind of your favorite, just on its own locality?
Probably between Sulas, depending on the region of Sula, or Sumatrans.
Yeah.
Like when I got into it back in the 90s, it was wild caught and more wild caught and more wild caught. So they didn't have the albinos and tigers until I think mid 90s. So I used to get all kinds of weird, really mean retics, and they're usually Sulas or Sumatrans, but yeah, they're probably the best ones.
No, that's awesome. Well, Eric, thanks so much once again, man. I've been following you for a long time along with Garrett, but it's been, once again, a pleasure just to get to know you in person and kind of see everything that you're currently working on, your new facility. I'm really excited to see that. And sooner than later, but I'll have to come out and visit some point.
San Diego.
Yeah, but anyway, appreciate you, man. We'll see you guys next week.